Hi, and welcome to this video lesson. We're just going to talk about the process of learning. So the objectives today are to help you understand how learning takes place and then give you a sense of what college teaching looks like so you can better prepare for it. So let's begin with the process of learning. Okay. So let's ask the question, what is learning? Now we are all used to doing certain tasks like reading books, working on problems, listening to audio or video to try and learn new material, right? So if we carefully analyze what's going on, we can typically break it down into three processes. One type of learning is basically acquiring new manual or physical skills. So for example, you learn to use a knife to cut a piece of fruit, or you learn to use a soldering machine to perform soldering. That's a new manual or physical skill, and that type of learning is called psychomotor learning. The other type of learning is to be able to develop new emotions, new attitudes, and new values. For example, learning to develop empathy to your fellow classmates and your fellow citizens is a type of learning, and this type of learning is called effective learning. And finally, we have probably the one that we recognize most easily is cognitive learning. That means learning new information that we can then recover from our stored memory to answer questions, right? So this is known as cognitive learning, and this means that you are acquiring new knowledge and intellectual knowledge, for example by taking a new class, for instance this engineering 100 class. So this is what learning is. Learning is being able to acquire new skills, new emotional feelings, and new knowledge through either a psychomotor, affective, or cognitive process. Okay, so with that, remember that all three of these things are important to you to develop as you grow towards your goals of becoming an engineering student, and even beyond that. In fact, one of the biggest things for you to realize is that in the modern economy, it is important for you to be developing all these three skills all the time, even after you graduate from college. Okay, now let's look at the question of how do we learn. And you can break this down into two parts. Learning can be a process of receiving new knowledge, or receiving new knowledge, or a process of processing new knowledge. And what does that mean? Well, receiving new knowledge is essentially listening to a YouTube video or a TED talk, doing some hands-on skills. For example, you learn to knit a new type of sweater, or you learn to use a sewing machine to make face masks, or you reflect on what you have read. You learn by seeing a video or a movie, or you learn by hearing somebody give a talk. So this is receiving new knowledge, and you can see the knowledge being received here by a couple of different means. Sensing, by actually doing something. Intuitive, that means you make some leaps in knowledge by making steps that connect to different experiences that you have. Visual means that you're looking at a video or a movie or reading. Verbal is you're listening to somebody or listening to somebody give a talk on the TV or on the radio, right? Now that's the information that is coming in. Now once it comes in, then you are processing it, and that is also part of the learning process. And that can be distinguished into 4 steps, and each person has a tendency to use all 4 steps in varying degrees. For example, some of you might like to actually experiment with things, opening it up and closing it together, and something called reverse engineering, where you like to see how things work by opening it up. This is a form of active learning. Some of you might like to spend time just thinking about what you read and trying to connect it to your different experiences. That is called reflective learning. A sequential learning is the process by which you like to go step by step and build up towards your solution or your understanding by making sure that you have concrete steps in the process leading up to your final answer. Okay? A global learner is one that tries to put together different ideas from different fields and tries to make sense of what's going on in the problem that they're trying to solve. So all of you utilize these four aspects to certain degrees. In fact, as part of this class, you will actually be performing a self-evaluation where you will assess your learning style by taking a questionnaire at this website here. And this is something that is part of one of your home assignments. Okay. Now here's something very important to remember. And the fact is that no matter how much effort you put in, the critical part of putting in effort is to do it in a timely manner. Here is something known as the forgetting curve. So on the x-axis is shown the time since when you have learned some new material. For example, you might start a class and a new lesson in a class, and day one you listen to this new lesson, and then you are measuring time from that point on. And on the y-axis here is shown the amount of new knowledge that you retain following the time after which you have learned some new material. And what this curve shows here, if you look at this particular curve, you'll see that within 24 hours, the amount of new knowledge that you have retained has dropped to about 30%. And if you don't go back and reread that material, within a day it's dropped to about 20%, and then within a week it's dropped to about 15%. Okay? And so what that tells you is that if you do not go back and re-review or reread your material or re-explore it in some way, you're going to forget that new knowledge that you have gained. And so one of the most important things about gaining knowledge is to constantly review material on a periodic basis. And so the curve, forgetting curve, really is trying to help you understand that you need to be able to remember and retain material by actually reviewing them on a periodic basis. And the good news is that in a typical college environment, you get to review this material because you're going to prepare for quizzes, you're going to prepare for tests, and you're going to prepare for exams. And so if you're doing that and not waiting to the last minute to prepare for these things, but you look at your material right after you learn it within a day, you retain back that knowledge that you have, and then a day later you again just browse through it, you're again going to retain it, and so on and so forth. So it's important for you to continuously do this process, right? And this is a scientifically proven fact that learning and retaining material requires regular and timely review on your part. Okay, so here are some tips to take forward on when you should be reviewing material and what type of material to review. So I would urge you to just go through this table in your time. On the the left column here is when you should be performing your review, and on the right column here is what you should do. So for example, before you come to class, you should be reviewing any notes that that were delivered in the previous class, maybe even going ahead and reading the text and trying to ask some questions, formulate some questions, so that when you come to class you're prepared to understand what's going on, right? Then here's another example of preparing for a test or the exam. Constantly review notes, do problems, meet with other buddies in your class, form a group, go over material, and unsolve problems. Okay, so with that, let's look at the teaching process that you will encounter in college. From this figure, you'll see that immediately you're going to most likely have an experience that you have not had in a high school, and that is be completely disconnected from the instructor or the teacher. Imagine being in a class like this. There is no way the professor is going to know who you are, know your name, or even interact with you on a one-on-one basis. So immediately you see that teaching in a college can be very different from being in a high school. And one of the most important differences you will find here is that the communication between the teacher to student is largely one way. So that is basically saying that the professor is going to just provide you information, and now it is up to you to figure out how to learn from it. Okay, so in class, learning is actually quite limited because it's largely information that is being provided to you. So what it means is that you have to be able to adapt to this teaching style, and every teacher might have a different teaching style. Not all classes are going to be big classes like this. You'll have smaller classes too, especially as you progress through your from your freshman year to your sophomore year and into your senior year. Class sizes will become smaller as you focus in on your discipline, right? The most important tip I can give you is never forget to ask for help from your faculty. Okay, they are willing to help you, but you need to reach out to them. They are not going to reach out to you like you would find in a high school or in a community college environment. So it's up to you to take that initiative and make sure you get the help you need. Okay. So here's something that has come out of research done on college students. It turns out that the students who get the most out of college and who grow the most academically and who are happiest are able to organize their time to include activities that are interactions with faculty members and with fellow students, and all of these interactions are built around academic learning. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind. Okay, so with that, let me leave you with some strategies that you will have to start thinking about when you enter college that are going to be quite different from what you're used to in high school. The first thing is you cannot assume that teaching in the college is going to be anything similar to that in high school. So these are things you should avoid. You should avoid these common pitfalls. One is assuming college study is going to be like high school. The other is if you don't spend time on campus, you're going to miss out on a lot of important academic as well as extracurricular activities that are critical to your success in college. Of course, neglecting study is the number one reason you might have a challenge, especially if you don't do it, as I said, on a regular basis, so that you are making sure that the forgetting curve doesn't take over. Okay. The other tip I would give you is never study alone. Collaborative learning is one of the best ways to accelerate and retain information, because often you will see that your friends will have ways to solve problems that are just way better, and that helps you learn and become better too. And likewise, they will learn from your approaches, and that process is going to last you much longer in terms of your habits. Okay, so please make sure to work with others. Okay, so go through some other tips here. For example, one of the things that you should not be doing is avoiding professors. You should always have the courage to go up and talk to them. Remember, they're there to help you, but in a class of 50 or 100 students, they aren't going to reach out to you individually. So you need to be able to do that. Okay, so with that, I'm going to wrap up. Make sure you read through chapter 3 of the textbook, from which most of this material has been taken. Also look through any lecture slides that might be supporting this video lesson, and make sure to complete any activities related to content from this lesson. Thank you.